I put a post out there. It was 1 year post me stepping away from the C-suite. And I talked about how I never understood that the best version of me was yet to come.
Right.
Because my calendar dictated what I did every day. I had a salary and a title that said that I mattered. Like my identity was my career, and my job and my position. And the number of people that commented on that post on LinkedIn, and then the number of people that privately messaged me to say, wow, that really resonated with me. There are so many people struggling out there because they know they're stuck, they know they're unhappy, but their identity is tied to, or they need that salary, or they can't imagine life after. I mean, I kind of hung out and somewhere between grieving and depressed after I left, and I decided to step away. But I don't know that I really wanted to, but I knew I needed to.
My name is Ibrahima Abraham Cisse, host of Heliona Insights and founder and chief empathy officer at Heliona, a workplace wellness, culture, and engagement company purpose-built to maximize well-being, productivity, and retention for SMBs and mid-market organizations. Our mission is simple yet powerful: to transform workplaces by socializing mental health at work. Each episode dives into meaningful conversations with leaders, experts, and change makers, exploring strategies that create healthier, more connected, and resilient work environments. What does it take to get unstuck? To break through barriers, challenge the status quo, and ignite bold transformation? My guest today, Monica Cohen, has spent her career answering that question. With over 30 years of experience, including C-suite leadership at a $20 billion global food and beverage company, Monica has built a reputation as a fearless innovator, a bold decision maker, and a leader who gets things done. From managing an innovation accelerator to navigating high-stakes challenges, she has consistently empowered others to see and embrace their potential. And during the taping of this very episode, Monica received confirmation of an exciting new chapter in her journey. She has been appointed as the new CEO of the American Cider Association. This milestone is a testament to her bold leadership and ability to inspire transformation in any space she enters. Today, Monica also travels the world as a keynote speaker and consultant, helping teams and businesses unlock their potential and move forward with confidence. Her core message is simple but powerful: you have the power. In this episode, we will explore Monica's incredible journey, her strategies for helping others get unstuck, and how bold leadership drives innovation and meaningful change. So let's get started. I'm going to ask you a very interesting question, and there's a reason behind the question, but I'm very curious to hear your answer. Whenever you go out to parties, how do you introduce yourself?
Interesting. Okay. That was out of left field. Whenever I go to parties, how do I introduce myself? It's so funny. I was a kid that was one of those like in your face, like, hi, I'm Monica. You want to be friends? I think that I come kind of confidently into the room. I can't say I go to a lot of parties. Let's just start there. 8 o'clock bedtime isn't the worst thing in my life anymore, but confidently into the room. And I look for somebody interesting. And I think over the years, I really made a point to not just go to the people, beeline to the people that I know, but to beeline to people that I don't know, introduce myself and start a conversation that way. Really open to just meeting new people and having new experiences. That's how I am at a party. I walk in confidently and seek out people that I don't know. Right.
Well, I've already experienced the walking confident already. I know you guys can't see this, but earlier when she walked in, she had this fire jacket. If it was my size, I would have tried to trade something. I would say, hey, do you want my mic so I can get your jacket? All right, perfect. So I know before we started recording, you shared that you're from New York, and we're in Kansas City right now. It's very cold here, very, very, very snowy, and everything is slick. So how did you end up in Kansas City? And why did you come to Kansas City in the first place?
Yeah, great question. My job brought me here, and I was actually reluctant to come to Kansas City. When my CEO asked me to move to Kansas City, I'm like, what? Where? I've seen The Wizard of Oz. I think
Right.
people live there, but I don't think I want to live there. And coming from the East Coast, we have a little bit of a attitude about coming from the East Coast and or New York. But
Right.
truth be known, I'm not from New York City. I'm from upstate New York. I grew
Oh,
up in a
yes,
really
yes, yes.
rural community. And so we have snow here in Kansas City today, and I laugh because this is like a snow sneeze. I mean, I grew up in an area where we had just feet of snow pretty much from the fall through April.
Wow.
So really rural area, not the New York that a lot of people outside of New York know.
Right.
But it still took me like Midwest. People live in, I don't think I want to live in the Midwest. And he's like, it's great quality of life. It's great to raise kids here, cost of living. The first year was a little rough, I'll tell you. I got pulled over a few times on the road because it's wide open and I could speed. And just the transition. I mean, it's culturally very different. I would go into the store, Abraham, and people would talk to me. I'm like, why are they like, you're trying to shake me down for my purse? Like, why are you talking to me? Oh, because you're friendly. And so I've now been here since 2006. I've raised 2 children here. Kansas City is great. The growth has been great. I mean, music and restaurants and sporting events, go Chiefs, right? So it has been great, but it was a little bit of a transition for me to get here and settle in.
No, yeah, I have a funny story because when I also came to KC 13 years ago now, it's crazy. But I was driving on the highway. It was so huge. And I was like, oh, I can do whatever I want. And I like started speeding. I think I was doing like almost 80 miles an hour. And I got pulled over. And then the cop was like, do you know how fast we're driving? I said, yes, I know how fast I'm driving. No one is on the road.
Right.
And
These are wide open roads. Why can't I drive fast?
And he's like, son, you can't do that. I'm saying, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm saying, I'm from Africa. I just put it out there. But yeah, so you were working at Dairy Farmers of America for how long? 30 years?
Yeah. So I started like in the late 80s as an intern at a milk marketing cooperative. Yeah. A long time ago. A milk marketing cooperative. And I didn't know what a milk marketing cooperative was. I was a student of journalism at a college of ag and tech, and I needed an internship. And the milk marketing cooperative had a farm on this campus. And so there was a connection there. So long story short, I end up at Dairy Farmers of America's predecessor. It's not even a predecessor, but Dairy Cooperative. It's now part of Dairy Farmers of America. And I was an intern, and then I left and went on and worked for a not-for-profit. And then they had a position. Somebody was on maternity leave. They brought me back. That was a 1-year temporary position. She came back. She left eventually, and they brought me back. So I've had like a number of stints. So over a 30-some-odd year career, period, I had a career in dairy. I did leave a couple of times. By 2006, I was working in the Northeast office that we just talked about, upstate New York. And they asked me to come to Kansas City because Dairy Farmers of America, headquartered here in Kansas City, was working with Dairy Cooperative, has now acquired Dairy Cooperative. And so it was kind of all the same family. And so after about 6 months of convincing me that people actually do live in the Midwest and it's a good place to come and I should, I did. So that's how I ended up here.
Well, good for you, because I also was supposed to stop here and then go to Maryland, and I still have never been to Maryland. I was like, you know what, this place is actually pretty nice, and I think they call it Kansas City nice. The fact that people come to you and just be like, hi, how are you? How are you doing?
Right.
You're like, who are you? Back up. I don't
why are
want
you
to talk
talking
to you.
to me?
Yeah, exactly. But I know at some point you became the chief operating officer at, maybe I'm wrong, at Dairy Farmers of America?
Yeah, titles are tough. I wore multiple titles at once. So I was executive vice president, chief of staff, chief innovation officer. I oversaw communication. So like, I felt like, give it to Mikey. He'll like it or he'll lead it. Like turn around. We need somebody to take over sustainability or do this culture of innovation thing. Monica will do it. But I had a really long relationship and career under the CEO of Dairy Farmers of America, a guy named Rick Smith, who retired a few years ago. And so, he had worked with me for a long time and knew that he could trust me to take something on. And so chief operating officer, like in a different company, some of my responsibilities were like that of a chief operating officer. So I was pretty senior in the C-suite with a lot of responsibility. Huge business, right? Like moving milk around the country and or the world was just it was a $20 billion plus business, and headquartered right here in Kansas City. The largest private employer in Kansas City is DFA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense because I did, we met through you like telling me to contact like someone within your company. I can't remember her name, but she's actually no longer there now. She's doing her own thing as an entrepreneur, so which is cool. But when it comes to working in such a massive company, what was that experience like for you? Because I know, you've been in quite some time and you've left and then come back. Why did you leave, and why did you take the job again?
Yeah, I get asked to speak to a class at the University of Florida every semester. Somebody that I used to work with is a professor there. And one of the things that she wants me to impart on the students is you don't have to have it all planned out, right? And it doesn't have to be a linear. It could be like the zigzaggy path that you take. And I feel like when I look back on my career, it's been a little bit zigzaggy. Like what is needed, I'll get it done.
Yeah.
So in that, I think I just forgot your question. No, in that.
And I'm not going to edit that.
Right.
No,
this is a conversation is going all over the place.
Yeah.
So there just a lot of responsibility. The cows go 24/7, right? Like cows need to be milked every day and they don't sleep. They don't take off nights. They don't take off weekends. They don't take off holidays. So it was really kind of a committed to the job. And people would talk about work-life balance. I'm like, I had like life, and in it I did work, and in it I did so I might leave at 3:00 to go to my son's sporting event, but then I'm on my computer at 9:00 at night, or my phone is ringing at 4:30 in the morning because there's an issue at one of our plants.
Right.
And so I was really plugged into a lot in the organization and had a lot of responsibility for all kinds of things. But there were 20,000 people there and lots of talented people kind of keeping the wheels moving. So I loved it. I really did. And the farmers that I worked with, it's a farmer-owned milk marketing cooperative. They're salt of the earth people. Like as my kids drive across the country as I got older, I'm like, if you break down anywhere, just let me know where you are and I'm going to figure out which farm family is closest to you because we're calling them. And they're friends, these farmers that I've been working with for 30 some odd years. So why did I leave? So COVID happened, right? And it changed the world for a lot of us. Right. Oh my gosh, did it change our world? And my days got even crazier because dairy was an essential business, kind of keeping the trucks on the road, keeping, things moving. Our largest customer filed bankruptcy. We actually acquired them to keep farms in business because if, the buyer of milk goes under, the largest one in the country, like where are we putting the milk? Right. So we were doing that. We also had a CEO succession happen, a CEO transition. And so somewhere in there with all of this stuff going and kind of all of us reflecting on like, how am I living my life? And is this how I want to be? I was traveling all over the world, Abraham. Every week I was taking 4, 6, 8 flights. I might go to Phoenix for a meeting and then I'm hopping overseas for something else. Right. And so when the world shut down and my daughter came home from college and my son would come over for dinner and I just had family time, it was nice. I mean, I traveled the world and I loved it and had a lot of opportunity because of it, but kind of the slowdown was nice. We had the CEO succession, the transition that I talked about, and I had worked with the former CEO since I was an 18-year-old intern. And the change was not great. I didn't love it. I didn't respect the new leadership and I wasn't passionate about what I was doing anymore. And I realized I wasn't challenged anymore. And so when you're showing up someplace and you no longer love what you're doing and you feel like you're not giving 100% of the best of you, like it's time to reflect on, should I be here still? And so I decided to step away. How fortunate was I that I could step away, right? My kids were out of college. They were out of the house. I have a spouse who's super supportive. So I could, and I did. I stepped away and I just did this like, hey, eat, pray, love. I'm going to just chill. I'm going to read books for pleasure. I'm going to hang out on a beach. I'm going to have coffee with friends that I never had time to have coffee with before because I was working all the time. And I did that for about 9 months. But I knew I was too young and too ADHD to just be done. Right. And so I decided to hang a shingle as a consultant and a speaker. And I've been working with great people in a new space for me. Medical food is a new space for me. Doing that and speaking and loving it. And we can talk a little bit about the kind of the give back that I didn't realize I was doing as a speaker. And then I think I just told you, I just accepted a role as CEO of the American Cider Association.
Congratulations.
Brings me back to the kind of the agricultural roots that I had. Fun people, smart people, an industry that's new to me, but a lot of parallels to the dairy industry. And so I'm super psyched about that.
Right. No, yeah. Thank you for like sharing that and like breaking that down. And I'm going to pivot here very soon, but there's one question that I want to ask you about your experience working at such a massive company. And I talked to a lot of leaders, and I remember having a conversation with the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and he works with the government, a very big branch in that. And one of the things that he shared with me was like how much he loved doing what he does, but it came with a huge cost for him, which no one ever asked him. And I'm curious for you personally, what was the cost of doing all the traveling, working for a $20 billion company, and being part of so many different areas within the company? And personally, what was the cost to you? And you don't have to answer this because I know.
No, I'm glad to, because I think it's really important. So I grew up in a time, in an era where like women could have it all, but it also meant doing it all. So if I go back 30 years, like I was a young mother. I remember like one of these great days in my, early career was when children's Tylenol went from 4-hour efficacy to 6-hour efficacy. That meant I could take my teething son to daycare and get through lunch before I got a call to come pick him up because he had a temperature because he was teething. Right. These were days when you didn't have cell phones going back and forth and your computer wasn't coming home with you. Like you had to be in the office to do work. It was really tough. I remember like crying 11 o'clock at night. I'm doing laundry or, baking 50 Santa cupcakes for my son's first grade class and sprinkling, the coconut on the Santa beard and thinking, gosh, I'm exhausted. I need to go to bed. Right. So it wasn't easy. It was tough. I grew up in a household that was very traditional. My mother wasn't allowed to work. We didn't go without, but we didn't have a lot. My parents were 8th grade educated. We didn't have a lot of money. And so like I knew I wanted a different life and a bigger life. And I knew that maybe my path for that was to go to college, to get an education and to get a job. So I always knew I wanted to be a career woman. And I wanted to be able to provide for my family and have my kids have experiences that I wasn't able to have. And so you go to college and you get exposed to like new people, new thoughts, new opportunities and possibilities. You land a job and that's kind of compounded like, oh, new possibilities. Like I saw people, like I knew I wanted to work and I wanted to get a paycheck and I wanted to be able to provide. But when I ended up in corporate America, I saw people that had bigger titles, bigger salaries, corner offices, reserved parking spots, right? So it was like, oh, I want that. I don't know that I ever had very clearly in my mind aspirations to get to the C-suite. But when you work hard and you get rewarded, you work harder and you get rewarded again. Yeah. It was really hard. Right. And so the sacrifice was relationships. Like you can't keep a marriage together if you're always on a plane and in a different country. I missed my kids' birthdays sometimes. I missed, pick up from school, or my daughter, I can remember her in early days. Like, why am I the last one to get picked up from daycare? It was because I was flying out of the office to try to get there. So the cost was great, but the benefits were there too. My daughter got to walk the Great Wall of China with me because she came on a work trip with me. My kids were exposed to hard work and appreciate hard work. They've had great vacations. They don't have debt from college. So it was a trade-off. So I always felt like we were in it together. So, at some point I became a single mother of 2 children. It was like, I need everybody to do what they need to do. Like be obedient, put your clothes away, get your homework done. Don't tell me at 11 o'clock at night you need a poster board for your project tomorrow. Like, wow. Right. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was tough. It was at a great cost. I'm seeing, because I do women's empowerment presentations, that women today have different expectations. Right. I grew up, I was one of the guys. I never complained. I showed up. I worked hard. I did what I had to do. Women today have different expectations. Like we want your policies to reflect the fact that we're working women. Right. We didn't have a maternity leave at DFA. You went on disability if you were pregnant and having children. So organizations are realizing to like kind of keep the best and brightest in our ranks, which include women. We need to evolve our practices and policies. Right. So the cost was great. It was really hard. I have no regrets. My work family was a family. My home family sometimes suffered because I just couldn't do it all, but they also benefited from it. Wow. So really long-winded way of just saying like, yeah, the sacrifice is great. And maybe we need to look at ourselves and look in the mirrors and say, should it be that great? Right. I know you do a lot about mental health and wellness. It was only in the more recent years of my 30-some-odd year career that we started focusing on employee mental health and well-being, having hotlines, having helplines, bringing people aside and saying, it's okay, go and do this. I feel like COVID and the flexibility that we all realized that we could have working remotely, working from anywhere, unplugging so you can be there with your family has been huge for people and mental health and well-being in the workspace.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And, I like to ask the question because I know leaders sometimes, especially people in your position, very successful, people tend to just see that. But there's so much happening behind the scenes that only you know. And I genuinely believe that, sharing that does something to like an individual. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Can I share one little story with you?
Of course, yes.
What you do does matter, even if you don't recognize that it matters, and that can be good and bad. My father passed away in May, and I have 2 former employees, colleagues that I happen to supervise that at different periods in my career had fathers pass away.
Right.
And both of them posted a comment to me after my dad passed and said, "I'll never forget how you treated me after my father passed away." One had a father who was dying, and I'm like, "Leave." She was brand new on the job. And I said, "Leave, go be with him. This job will be here when you get back."
Indeed.
And the other I did something very similar with. And this is 20, 30 years ago, and it has stuck with them. And they have never forgotten that. And it's like putting your employees' needs first and their mental health and well-being first results in a better employee and a better workplace, right?
Right. No, yeah, that's what we're all screaming lately. But it's like, I feel like there are still companies that are like, let's just keep watching and see how far we can take on people. But thank you for being an advocate for that. And I do want to make a switch a little bit. I know now you do a lot of consulting and you are also doing a lot of keynote speaking. And congrats to your new job. I'm honored to be here to like one of the few people to get to hear the news of your new job. But as a consultant, now when you work with companies, and I know your speaking focus on like women empowerment as well. And this is something that I spend a lot of money on equity for like women, because back then I had a team of almost 60 people, almost 80% of my team were all women. So I was very like oblivious to some things that were happening, and I got educated, and I was like, you know what? From now on, I'm going to make sure that whatever I do, I lead with this, making sure that, equity is across the company, to make sure that I'm not just, being the leader and then entertaining some BS that doesn't benefit 80% of my team,
right.
which is huge. So, so I got to learn a lot. So to me, now I lead with that. Even the films that I produce are all focused around, centering the story around the woman and forcing men to listen to it and watch it. So in your experience as a consultant, how do you apply that into companies that you talk to or rooms that you speak at? And I'm curious to see how that looks like as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do from the stage is I admit that I got it wrong for a long time. I was proudly one of the boys. And that's how I had to kind of survive and thrive in the workplace, was just being one of the boys, right? Not complaining about having to leave and go get my daughter from daycare, just like doing what I had to do and not bringing that piece into work.
Right.
Over the years, we would have people come in from organizations like Starbucks or, other large organizations saying, we need a women's group. I'm like, we're not doing a women's group. I don't want to be at tea with the ladies at this conference.
Right.
I want to be in the bar or on the golf course with the guys talking business. Because really early in my career, I realized like I'd come into work on a Monday. I'm like, what? Did I miss a memo? No, I didn't miss a memo. I missed that guys went golfing on Friday afternoon and they were talking business, right? And so I kind of rejected that. Post the murder of George Floyd, organizations got smart to, we need to do a better job with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like we've been doing okay, but we need to do a better job. Time to get serious. So I became the executive sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organization and understood the value of ERGs, like that place and space where people can go with people like them, look around the room and say, oh, I do belong, or I can share, with other people. So the first thing that I do is admit that I got it wrong, but not entirely, because women are over mentored and under sponsored. And I feel like I did a lot covertly over the years to sponsor women, to make sure that they got the pay or the title or the opportunity that the that the men got.
Right.
And I worked in a largely male-dominated, older white male-dominated organization. So this was really obvious when you were in a room and I was the only woman and maybe we needed more women in there. Or we would do things like there was a meeting and we were taking the plane somewhere for this meeting and we had extra seats, like who should we bring on the plane? And it'd be like, well, not so-and-so because she has kids, she probably can't go. It's like, why don't we let her decide, right? And so just kind of putting a lens on of being more aware and of sponsoring. The fight that I had to fight for myself, I didn't want other people to have to fight. And so as we evolved in that space, I think I helped to accelerate that evolution. So when I take to the stage, I'm shocked when I get off the stage how many women are lined up to talk to me, and that some of the things that I thought we had gotten past in the workplace still exist. And women who don't know, I don't have an advocate. I don't know how to speak up. I don't want to be insubordinate. I feel like I've been passed over for this. I'm not getting paid. It's just crazy the stories that I get. So I do a lot of work on, you have the power.
Right.
I think for a long time we look to our employers or we look to the men running the organizations, and I'm not a male hater. I'm not. I'm almost like, hey, lady, look in the mirror. You have the power. Rather than looking to your male colleagues and or your employer to put that program in place to accelerate your career, to give you that opportunity, ask for it. Are you asking for it?
Right.
Have you identified, done a gap assessment? Where do you need to kind of skill up or tool up or retool, or what's holding you back? It's not just them. So look in the mirror and find people like me in your organization who can be an advocate for you, or ask for that raise or ask for that opportunity. And as I've gone through some unofficial coaching with some of these women, I'm finding out they're not asking, right? They're feeling frustrated and they're feeling stuck, but they're not doing things to let people know. You just don't know what people are dealing with. The guy who has a million things burning at home and at work today is not thinking about, maybe I should give Monica over here an opportunity. I think she's due. If Monica never asks. So 1,001 ways to just kind of empower yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can see that even in my own experience. When I had my production company, I had, like I said, 80% of my team were all women. And I remember, we wrote a script, just us guys. We wrote a script called I Have a Boyfriend. And the content behind it is to raise awareness about domestic violence. But it was just us guys writing about it. And then I remember, one of my employees, Jamie, she left, a script on the table, and it was her just lines, red lines and yellow lines, things that we should not say. And during filming, how to go about, engaging with the cast. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of any of this. And I ended up making her the director of the show, because I was going to direct it, but I was going to direct it as a guy. But one thing that I learned from that, I had to find that, and if I didn't find that, I would never know that she had all that, input on the script itself, and we were filming in a few days. So how does someone, especially a woman, how do they get out of that mindset and be like, I am enough, I'm going to speak up and actually ask or say what I want to say in the organization without feeling threatened by someone else? I know culture plays a big part in that as well.
Yeah, I'm sitting here as you're telling the story thinking, good for Jamie that she spoke up, but for every one Jamie that will speak up and feel like I want to be part of this and make this right and best as it can be, there are, 10 not Jamies who are afraid to speak up. You have to create an environment, create a culture where people don't have fear. There's so many organizations where people are afraid to speak up. What? I talk about challenge mindset and curiosity cultures and create an environment where the Jamies can feel comfortable and or the not Jamies, people who are not as confident and feel like it's their responsibility to kind of get out of their lane and just do the right thing for the organization, where they feel comfortable redlining your piece. Because I can't believe you didn't show up to work every day thinking how can I help the women in my organization today? No, of course not. You were thinking of the 14 things that you had to accomplish, that script being one of them.
Right.
So I think creating an environment that is inclusive and encouraging people to speak up, challenge the status quo, allow people the freedom to fail, the freedom to ask questions. Now you have to do it in the right way, right? Jamie wanted to make that the best and most authentic product that it could and should be. And she obviously had a relationship with you where she felt comfortable redlining it. And you were obviously a leader who felt comfortable having somebody do that and saying, thank you, we just now made it a better product.
Right.
So I think leaders need to look in the mirror and say, am I creating that place and space for the creative input, for the challenge? And a secure leader will, and an insecure leader won't, right?
Right.
So that's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So again, thank you for sharing all this. You know, I feel like I'm getting a masterclass, so thank you.
As am I.
But yeah, so when it comes to you and the work that you do and the work that you've done in the past, and you know, culture plays such a big you know, aspect when it comes to, you know, like massive companies, because sometimes you have all these like middle managers and like senior managers. But in my own example, I remember, I'm not going to name the company, but it's a massive company in Kansas City here. I'm not going to name the name. Let's just keep it there. But I went into their company, and I noticed that when I talked to one leader and the next leader, on and on and on, all of them have a different culture. And this is something that I also experienced in my team when I had, you know, a team of 60, which is small, but I had 5 managers and they were all managing different people. Each team was different from the other. Either this one is fun to work with, the other one is always quiet, the other one is very, very toxic, the way that they communicate, and then so on and so forth. But for you, someone who's working in such a massive company and now you're working with small companies, how do you think we can help leaders build better cultures, if that makes sense? You know, to make sure that, you know, we don't need to have one culture, because that doesn't make sense. There's, you know, humans are complex. You know, we bring different flavors to anywhere we go. But how do we make sure that we have a space for empathy, I call it, and then through that we can have leaders that are leading with empathy first, and then also understanding, and then wanting to create spaces for everyone else to thrive. Like, what would you say to leaders, and how can they create those spaces?
Yeah, one of the things that I say a lot is check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Like, thank you, ice tea. I want to say ice cube. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. If you are a leader who is not from the top, kind of leading with creating a culture that is safe, where people can be engaged and trust that they want to improve the organization, like, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Right.
Early in my career, Abraham, I was a boss. Like, I, you know, technically was sound. I worked hard. So I got rewarded by getting a department to report to me. And I wasn't trained to be a leader. I didn't know how to be a good manager. So I was a boss. Like, we had deadlines and we had to meet the deadlines. And if you don't like it, vote with your feet. I was like a terrible boss. I had to take a look in the mirror and say, be better. Like, you're losing people. Like, there's a reason you're losing people. I got coaching. I got counseling. I mean, a lot of organizations have an HR department that can, you know, how to have difficult conversations, how to be a better leader, bring in a coach from the outside, like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. I went to counseling to learn how to respond better. Like, my strength in the organization was being tough. It was also my weakness. When people that I was leading were kind of, you know, under the weight of my toughness, crushing, not good, right? So I had to change myself. So as a leader, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Look in the mirror and do better. So I worked in an organization where we were passionate about what we did. And it was from the top down, driven, that you work for farmers. And when I showed up at DFA in 2006, like, I would go to our board and cheese plant and I would ask an employee, like, oh, who do you work for? Like, or how long have you been here? Oh, I've been working for Board and Cheese. No, actually, you work for the farmers that own Dairy Farmers of America. So, like, people were associating with the brands of the various plants and businesses across the country.
Right.
It's like, no, you work for these farmers. And so we did some things like, here's our mission, vision, values. And we put them on the wall with pictures of our farmers. So if you worked for that Board and Cheese plant in Plymouth, Wisconsin, when you walked into your lobby or in your break room, you saw the faces of the farm families that if you did a good job today, you helped. And if you did a bad job, you hurt. And so people started getting this understanding of, oh, this is who I work for. And I'm proud to work for these people. And so engaged employees who feel like they don't just stay in their lane. They're not just showing up for a paycheck. I do my work and I go home. But engaged employees who want to, they see something wrong over here and they say, there's something wrong over here. And they want to do a good job, not just for themselves themselves and their paycheck, but for the organization.
Right.
It starts at the top. I mean, it has to be an expectation of leadership. It also has to be modeled by leadership.
Right.
To value your employees and demonstrate that, if you do a good job today, our organization does better. I actually feel bad for the employee who's just showing up for that paycheck. And usually when you look at the person who's like, I'm not going to give an extra minute. I'm going to come in right at whatever time I'm going to leave at, or I'm going to shut my computer down at that time. Like there's an issue there. Like when employee engagement is failing, you start doing some research and peeling back the layers. The issue is in leadership, in management, in clear vision. Communication is huge. Communication can solve a lot of problems.
Right.
So a really long-winded answer, but usually a not engaged employee, it's not the employee's fault a lot of times.
Yeah. And my previous guest, like 2 episodes ago, last year, I just want to say that last year.
Oh yeah, that was.
But she is a lawyer who now, became an entrepreneur now. And, we were talking and, somewhere she, I believe I shared this, but I could be wrong. But we were talking about what if we start changing onboarding, like instead of writing a boring job description. Well, what if we actually change the way we onboard people, like start from the job description?
Yes.
And I said something silly. I was like, maybe like like recruiting should become a podcast where you bring in the candidate and just talk to them and just have a conversation, get to know them, and then start the culture from the job description so that people come in with that expectation. And I can't remember how she put it. It was so beautiful. And I don't want to even attempt it because I'm going to butcher it. But I'll recommend for you guys to go listen to my conversation with Elizabeth Souter. I remember the episode. I'm going to link it here as well. But yes, the way she shared it, you saying your own perspective kind of took me back to that.
Yeah, I want to listen to that episode because I'm on stage and I say, onboarding is a dirty word, right? That's bringing in new talent that you've hired and saying, this is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. This is how we want you to do it. And in fact, a few years ago, and I never got to it, but a few years ago, I decided I wanted to do something called the white paper series. And when we brought people into the organization, like bring the newbies into a room and say, especially the younger hires, right? The less seasoned hires, bring them into a room and say, what did you find interesting? Like when you came on board, what was weird to you? If you were CEO for the day, what would you like? Ask them, stop telling them what you want them to do. Right. Ask them what they kind of found great, not so great, difficult, odd. What if they were in charge for a day, would they do? And just like listen to that. Right. Onboarding is definitely needs to be turned upside down or on its head. And I talk about that being a dirty word. A lot of organizations went from like, we had police officers in HR to people officers. And with that was the movement of, I mean, it truly were.
Police officers?
Well, they weren't literal police officers, but they were like,
they're like watching.
Going around taking attendance and so-and-so wasn't at their desk at, 5 to 8 or whatever. It's like, what are you doing? Like you're supposed to be like not the enemy of the employee, but the partner to the employee. And organizations have figured that out. And you hear, chief people officer is a very intentional title. Like I come in peace. Like I'm not here to just ding you or fire you. Yeah.
And like report you to the CEO.
Right.
Or leadership. Well, we've definitely grown, progressed a lot from that to now chief people officer. I feel like 20 years ago, if you said your title was chief people officer, they're gonna be like, wait, what?
Right.
Are you like hugging trees or something? Not that anything is wrong with hugging trees, but just saying. But yeah, since we're in the sense of you giving consulting and talking to people during I did a quick research last night before coming here, and I noticed that you say that your passion is around helping people get unstuck. And I'm sure that has everything to do with your own experience. What does that mean to you, and how do you apply it today when you go out and about?
Yeah. Interestingly, when I started out in my career, it wasn't about helping people, but I've always shown up in places where it wasn't the status quo, right? Like there was a problem to be fixed or an organization that needed to change, or coming here in Kansas City in 2006 was about kind of helping this organization get to a new level. There was a culture challenge, all of that good stuff. So I've never taken a job that was a status quo. I don't know, adult ADHD or just a fixer of problems. I'm kind of wired that way. The helping people, I guess, I showed up in places without really recognizing it where I was helping people. So, as a reporter, which I did early in my career, that was about bringing news. This was the days of like ethics in journalism, not the days that we're in today, bringing information to people. Then I went to the American Lung Association, worked for a not-for-profit, helping people in that realm. Then I ended up in milk marketing, farmer-owned, helping farm families. So I've always been kind of in the space of helping. Which I guess as I reflect on my career, I don't know that was intentional, but clearly that was something that I wanted to do. And I felt good about showing up. Like there are certain organizations that I wouldn't feel good about working for. I felt good about working for farmers. Going to cider, I feel good about helping those people. Like small cideries across the country to large cideries. These are people and families and behind these businesses. I feel good about that. The helping people thing, I show up. I'm part of Impact 11 community. It's a speaker resource, and in one of my very first meetings with them, they talked about kind of how we help people. I'm like, I don't know that I thought about that. I think a lot of people go into speaking because like, I can make good money speaking and maybe I'll write a book and I'll do. No, actually it's about being in front of and with people and helping people. And that's a really noble thing. Right. I am more excited to leave the stage and have the conversations with people via LinkedIn or in person or at the reception after the event that I'm at. And then I helped a woman land a job. I mean, she was stuck. She wanted to throw her hat in the ring for a position at KU, and she didn't know how to go about it. I did unofficial coaching with her over the course of like 8 weeks, helped her with her PowerPoint and presentation, helped her with her confidence. She landed the job. I was like, that felt really good. And so I can't tell you honestly that I was like, I want to help people. I want to give back. No, I want to take the stage because I really enjoy the stage and I like, it's fun and oh, wow. And I'm really filled. Like my cup is full because I talk to people and help people get unstuck. So I think in my organization and in the career that I've had, I helped organizations get unstuck, challenge the status quo, chief innovation officer. That wasn't about like product flavors, packaging, all of that. That was about a culture of innovation. That was about getting people to think differently. Like, we have constraints, resources, time, money. Okay, let's figure out it's still the right thing to do. Let's figure out how to get there. So I really love kind of the problem solving that comes with getting unstuck. And I've always done it for organizations. And now I'm finding that it's really fulfilling to do it for individuals.
Right. And just me like listening to you, there's so much power in the way you speak, the way you share your perspective, your story, and all the experiences that you had. So thank you for that, because I think, especially as someone who, in your background, the things that you've accomplished, I've just the journey that you've went through to be where you are today and still have that energy, that power in your voice to keep doing what you do, I think is very incredible. And I think a lot of people will find value in that.
And one of the things that I've been reminded of, Abraham, is not everybody has the confidence level to walk in the room like me, right? And so
it's a skill. It's a
huge
one.
I would have people like HR telling me but that's great, Monica, but not everybody feels comfortable speaking up. And so my job and responsibility then was to help those people who couldn't and didn't. So become the Lorax of the trees, right? And so now I'm doing that from the stage. Before I was doing that in an organization, but recognizing that some people are anxious, some people are not confident, some people are, and so if I have the gift, I guess, of confidence, which hopefully never falls into the obnoxious realm, how do you help people who don't, right? And that I was in a position of power at a large organization, or that I had the ear of the CEO, I use that not just for my benefit, but for everybody else.
Yes. Well, you're very incredible. I just have to say that. And I like to ask this question is about grit and just like resilience, because nowadays everyone in corporate America is like grit and resilience, grit and resilience. I didn't even know what it actually meant.
It means crazy. It means being crazy enough to just do it, right?
Yeah, and until someone brought it up years ago. He's like, "You were very grateful." I'm just like, "Wait, what?" And I'm just like, "Well, thank you, but sure." But now I hear it a lot. And how does that play into your own speaking engagement? Because I know you're very grateful, and I know you talk about building safe spaces for communities, mainly not only women but also leading women to power. But how does grit play in your experiences and also the things that you do today?
Yeah, so I think and you and I talked a little bit about this before we got going today with my most recent LinkedIn post. I was born a blue baby, wasn't supposed to make it past 2 months. I think that we are wired that way, and our life experiences teach us. I mean, the homeless child that got to Harvard on full scholarship after living in their car for, their entire childhood. So I think that our experiences do make us. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody who had tough experiences, similar experiences, will automatically be wired with grit, right? So how is it? I think it's just innate in me. Like, I was raised in a very traditional household. My father was very domineering. My mother wasn't allowed to work. Kind of witnessing her inability to do some things created a desire for an ability to do some things for me. And so kind of I watched that, and I wanted to not be that. My sister was the same way. Had we had a third girl in the house, she may have been just like mom, you know what, I'm just not going to buck the system. So I don't know that it's natural for everybody. For some of us, it's natural, and then we just kind of build on it. Well, watch out for us. Some of you are just please settle down. Just because you haven't been wired with, had the experiences and kind of naturally fall back into grit, or weren't born a blue baby, doesn't mean you can't learn it, right? So there are a lot of people that are. I have a friend who's a CEO of an organization. She is an introvert. She would rather have her wisdom teeth pulled than stand before the board and have to deliver, the financials. But she knows she has to do it. So she's trained herself. Coaching, books, practicing, practice. And so you're an athlete in a sport, you might have a natural ability, but all those naturally able athletes still practice to be better. So I think that the grit thing is something that can be learned. It might come easier for some of us than others, but it can be learned, and it can be refined. For me, I have to kind of pull back on my grit, right? For some other people, they have to get grittier. I think I told you earlier in the podcast that I went to a counselor. I went to a counselor to learn. I did EMDR therapy, which was something that kind of started with trauma, and it was trauma healing. We've now figured out that EMDR can help people kind of get desensitized to some things that aren't positive. For me, that strength and that gritty was alienating in relationships at home and could hold me back at work. I told you about being a boss, not a leader. So I had to learn how to kind of manage my grit. For somebody else, they might have to learn how to build grit.
And how would you describe being a boss and a leader? Because you just briefly mentioned it earlier, and you just touched on it again, and you talked about just grit. And so I want to hear from your own perspective.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate being a boss and a leader?
Boss is bad. Leader's good. So boss was I kind of ran my department like my home. I'm the mother and I said so. So just do it, right? So at home, I want the kids to put their clothes away. I told you, just do it. So do it. No questions.
Yes.
At work, I was kind of the same way. As a boss, it was this is what we have to do. It was communications department. So we had these obligations, responsibilities, just do it. I didn't see myself as part of a team, and I didn't see myself as part of the solution. I just saw myself as the dictator of just get it done.
Yes.
It doesn't work. That's boss. Leader is, I'm part of this team. Together, we're going to work and we're going to get this done. I had to understand and learn that people have different, let's just talk about grit. Some people were gritty, some people weren't. If they weren't gritty, that didn't make them weak, right? They had a different skill, and I had to figure out how to tap into them to get them to the finish line differently than the gritty person. And so a leader was being part of the team and taking the time. I remember having a fairly not seasoned employee who was frustrating, hired her. She had, asserted that she had all of these skills, and I was really frustrated that she wasn't getting things done. I sat her down to put her on a performance improvement plan and talk about how she was failing the organization. And I talk about, it's farmer money and all that. And when I said, you're failing the organization, and if I don't do something about it, then I'm failing the organization, she said, you're failing me. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, I need your help and guidance, and you're not giving it to me. Okay, that was me being a boss. The leader was, yeah, you absolutely do need my help and guidance. Let's work on this. Let's get this done. Let's, whatever it is that you need. And so I had to really make that mental shift. Just because you're put in charge doesn't mean you're in charge of just dictating what needs to be done. You are the end all accountability for this. And so if your team needs you and you're not showing up for them, you're not being a good leader.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for the breakdown, and thank you for validating my, software. because that's what we do here, Heliona. If you're wondering, guys. And we're getting to the end of this. I have so many questions. Try to crunch and see which one I want to go with. But before that, I want to talk about your shirts. You have this T-shirt that says Slay, and I find it very cool because I also have a brand that I've cultivated where I wear a fedora all the time. I don't have it right now because I'm recording.
I've seen that picture of you.
I'm recording, so it will be a bit like redundant wearing a fedora. But is that part of your brand as well, or is this something that you have different variations of where whenever you're out speaking or being a consultant, you have that on? And when you're working as a CEO or now a new CEO, is that still something you're going to embody, like your Superman?
Yeah. So the word on a T-shirt is part of my brand when I take to stage. Now, the word isn't always slay.
Yes.
Slay is the one that is almost universal.
Right.
Where slay comes from is my husband, Barton, and I got married in November, but we've been together 7 years. And when we first got together, he was just used to me getting up really early in the morning to head to an airport to go somewhere. And we had 2 coffee mugs. Slay the day is what he used to say to me. And so the coffee mugs were slay the day. And so every morning as I was, talking to him or leaving for work when we moved in together, it was, slay your day or slay the day. And so slay has been kind of our word, but also it's kind of been the word that I use to impart on others, like slay your day. And we get to define what that looks like, right? And some days the tank is empty. Slaying might be just getting through the day.
Right.
Other days you might just like light the world on fire, and slay looks like that. But yeah, this is part of my brand and the reminder that slay your day, and you get to decide what that looks like.
Well, I am gonna start saying that. Before, like the past 2 years, my New Year's, resolutions were like long, and now I have a therapist that I have on my podcast, and she shared that, hey, like that's a lot, Abraham.
Right. Set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. And then she shared with me, like, she's like, have you heard of the term one word? Like going into a new year with one word. So now my word is just be present. Be present in everything I do. At least do my best to be present in everything I do, because still it can be very challenging. So be present in the work that I do here, podcast, be present as a leader, be present, as a husband and a dad and all these other areas in my life. And it's been very interesting because I think it's actually working and is a lot less stressful. And today is actually National Quitting Day. Can you believe that?
No.
Because apparently people would set all this resolution and at the 10th of January, they're like, you know what, this is unrealistic. I'm going to quit. So
can I confess something to you?
Sure.
I don't and have never set resolutions.
Oh, wow.
I don't, because I for the very reasons that you just pointed out. Instead, like,
it's
what is it you want to accomplish? And I think throughout the year it can change. Be present. I absolutely love. The days of landlines, I had a landline phone in my office and I had a little Post-it note on there that said be present. Because if you came into my office, I had my landline phone, I had my cell phone, I had a second cell phone, I had my my iPad, and I had my laptop. Like all these screens and people coming in and out, and it's like so hard to be present. So I think having just kind of that commitment to that one thing is so much better than that long list that you were just going to fail trying to accomplish.
It was ridiculous because, I shared earlier that I had ambitions to be a senator someday, like go into politics, which I was like, no, not anymore. Things are too chaotic for me. But yeah, I would have all this long list of, all right, January, I'm going to do this, February, this, March. And then I would look at it and I'm saying, this is insane. But then I noticed that, it doesn't matter what month it is, whatever I'm doing, I'm never present. Like, and even the events that I put together, I will see people having a great time, but I'm in my head frustrated.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not enough. The food is not cold enough.
Right.
The food is not warm enough. I'm like, what is happening? And I never actually enjoy the things that I put together, but they're always like aftermath, like whenever the videos come out, and I'm like, I don't remember this being this awesome. And
sometimes you just don't have the luxury of being present. But if you're at least mindful about the desire to be present, like sometimes you do have the luxury.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen, there's I don't know what they call it, a life chart or something, but it's like basically dots and it's the days of the year or something. Like, and it's just about like time is finite. We're not here forever.
True.
And it's the reminder to be present. It's the reminder to slay your day in whatever way you want, right?
Right.
And I almost can't even look at that chart because I'm like, no, I want like so many dots because there's so many things that I want to do. But sometimes we just don't forgive ourselves when we put those lists together and we don't get through them. It's
Right.
like, what is really important?
Interesting.
Father of two. What is really important,
yes,
right?
Yes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm baby number 2. What's happening? But yeah, so what does the future of leadership look like? I know things are changing very, very fast, and you may have to explain to our younger generation what exactly is a landline, because it's like a landline is it the mobile that you have to hold with all of your fingers, and then also it has a long cord that connects to it. For some reason, I have TikTok where I would share something and then I'll take questions from that for the podcast. I'm gonna ask you a question, then we're gonna jump
about
to TikTok.
Landline. How old was that woman that you had? Landline. It's a telephone.
Right.
It's the precursor to this thing that we
huge.
carry.
No, I remember back when I was in high school, I would take the landline and it has this long cord.
Yeah, because you want to be heard by
I'm
everybody in the family.
hiding, like talking or calling someone, trying to go hang out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what does the future of leadership look like as we progress into, I guess, the year of empathy? That's what I've been calling it, where people are wanting to learn about mental health, wanting to learn about being there for one another, but then we are also in such a chaos time, like where chaos is at the forefront. And I know a lot of leaders are trying to manage different groups of individuals. There's so much beliefs that are coming into work, like workplaces. As a leader, how do you navigate that, and how do you make sure that you stay neutral, which is hard because we all have our own opinions and biases. But how do you stay neutral in a workplace where people are from different backgrounds are coming in such a chaos time, but you just want to be empathetic and help people scale and grow?
Yeah. I think everything is cyclical. And I think that, we're in this not great time, this very divisive time. There's this quote that my history teacher in high school had on his board, and many people have heard it. Those who do not remember history are condemned to repeat it.
Right.
And I feel like we're in this space right now where this condemnation of repeating it is a little scary to me. But I think that this divide will have to change. Well, I had a friend say to me this morning, we were texting, it's a group chat, and it was like, I remember post 9/11, how everybody just came together.
Right.
So the future of leadership, in my desire, in my head, will look more collaborative. I feel like because of technology, we're in this space, in this place where you get the best and brightest. Like, I have a friend who works for the city of Las Vegas, and I actually met him at a think tank where all kinds of us from eclectic and diverse backgrounds were brought together to kind of solve one common problem, single-use plastic. And he made this comment of like, why wouldn't you hire the best candidate for you can go anywhere because of this virtual technology opportunity that we have, that that best person doesn't have to be in your city anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, but then there's this challenge of how do you have really, I love the fact that we're sitting across from each other and that we are in person with one another.
Yep.
That's how I had great relationships in the work environment that I was in, that I knew these people, that I saw them at the annual conference, or that I sat around a table and we brainstormed with Post-it notes. So I think that the future of leadership is more empathy.
Right.
I think people understanding the value of time differently. Like I talked about earlier, I had to do it all. I was a woman in the workplace that had to do it all. I had to go into the office to work. Now my daughter can sit on her couch on her laptop and be plugged in anywhere in the world doing the work for a company outside of LA.
Right.
So I think people will understand the value of personal health and well-being taking priority, but you still expect this engaged employee who's passionate about the organization that they're with. Right. So leadership, I think, will have an opportunity to redefine itself as being more human-centric. Really kind of long-winded way of saying leadership needs to be, and I think will be, more human-centric.
Right. Well, we're in a time where long-winded answers are needed because people listen with bias, so breaking it down sometimes helps pass through that bias. So thank you for that. And I just have so many questions coming in, but I'm just going to keep that till part 2. Yes, that'll be a part 2, guys, and she will be here.
In person.
In person always. I believe in the power of connection. And I have been very fortunate to talk to the Surgeon General. I don't know if you've ever heard him speak, but this man embodies empathy. The way he talks is so soft. And he's always authentic, no matter where you see him. he talks the same way. Genuine human being. Almost like he literally redefined empathy in public office.
Yeah.
So I hope someday he like runs on empathy for office. I don't think he would. It's too chaos.
Well, then
right?
maybe you might have political aspirations again if he did, right? But if
Yeah,
you think
if I
about the
did.
podcasts, like that are the people who are super popular with their podcasts and who people are plugging in to listen to, people with empathy, right?
Right. Indeed. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
like
true.
a Brene Brown, like
No, man.
she's huge. Why?
Yeah,
Empathy.
she's very empathetic. Hopefully we can have her in Kansas City this year because that's my goal. But yeah, so we're getting to the end of this discussion, and I have a closing question that I ask all my guests.
And that you warned me about.
Yes, I gave you a heads up today, but we've talked about a lot today, and I appreciate you for sharing everything that you've shared with us because I think a lot of people will find value in it. And the closing question, I want to know, after everything we've talked about today, from the moment you walked into the building to now, how is your spirit right now? How do you feel? How is your spirit overall? Because I believe that leaders sometimes are always talking about it, helping everybody else, but when it comes to helping themselves, we tend to forget. So I want to center you back again and ask you again, how is your spirit?
Yeah, I think my spirit is good, but that's because I had a moment 2 years ago where it was like my spirit was dying. I talked about not being passionate, not being challenged, not feeling valued. And like, I just had to do something about it. The fact that I had to like take 9 months to just unplug tells me how damaged I was without realizing, because I just showed up every day. I was the Energizer Bunny. My spirit was really crushed then.
Right.
For a really strong, gritty person to admit your spirit is crushed, that's a big deal.
Right.
My spirit today is really good, but then I'm anxious because what we're talking about, like, yeah, I need to do more, right? But that's me doing more for other people.
Right.
I feel like in a really good place to be able to do for other people because my spirit is great right now.
Yeah, I can see that. And, even what you shared, I can relate to that. Back in 2022, I had to let go of pretty much a massive team because I felt like, I wanted to help so many people, but then I was like looking around, I was like, what are we doing here? So I had to let go, and it took me 3 years to recover from just the mental exhaustion, from politics, flying all over the U.S. And I did a whole tour across all 50 states, and I was like mentally exhausted. I took 3 years off. I was doing things, but it's not even compared to what I used to do. I had to recover mentally, spiritually, emotionally, everything. And luckily, I had a partner who also gave me room to thrive through that downtime, and why I made that post, because that's when I actually felt myself again.
That's great.
Which is last year.
Yeah.
It took a long time of me just like trying to like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do anymore, because my identity was wrapped around all of
Your
that.
tank was empty.
Yeah, and now that it was not around, I'm just like, well, okay, well, what am I like? What do I do next? It took me 3 years. So I think it's important for people to take time to recover. And especially spending years in pursuing something, wanting to grow in a position or get some title. Whenever you lose that, hopefully whoever it may be, they have someone there that can help them recover and give them space to like heal just in general, and hopefully
you said
slay
something
someday.
huge there which was your identity was tied to that.
Right.
I think you and I kind of connected a year or so ago. 2 years ago, or no, it was a year ago.
Yeah, I think so.
In October, I put a post out there. It was 1 year post me stepping away from the C-suite. And I talked about how I never understood that the best version of me was yet to come.
Right.
Because my calendar dictated what I did every day. I had a salary and a title that said that I mattered. Like, my identity was my career,
Right.
And my job and my position. And the number of people that commented on that post on LinkedIn, and then the number of people that privately messaged me to say, wow, that really resonated with me. There are so many people struggling out there,
Right.
because they know they're stuck. They know they're unhappy, but their identity is tied to, or they need that salary, or they can't imagine life after. I mean, I kind of hung out and somewhere between grieving and depressed after I left. And I decided to step away.
Right.
But I don't know that I really wanted to, but I knew I needed to.
Needed it, yeah.
And I hung out in like my bed, drinking coffee and watching the morning news until 9 o'clock every morning, where I used to jump out at 6 a.m. and get on, the elliptical and then go to work and what have you. I was like lost. I was lost. But today I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I had done that sooner. You probably wish you had done your kind of awakening sooner. And so for people who are stuck and are stressed and can't imagine because their identity is tied to it, like one door closes, another door opens. And I'm so excited for the doors that are opening for me now
too.
and the doors that are opening for you.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and like congratulations to your new position.
Thank you.
Going back to the CEO helm, and I'm sure you're going to bring a lot of value to that lucky team. But yeah, I'm genuinely appreciative for you saying yes to doing this. And I look forward to part 2, which which will be a continuation of identity, because I think there's a lot there to like talk about. I have 6 more questions.
Wow.
But we're gonna talk about that part 2. I always tend to go off script, and again, Monica, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experiences. And I look forward to having you again. I think it's going to be fun just continuing this conversation. So thank you for
Appreciate
being here
it.
today.
All of us supporting one another is kind of how we all move in the right positive direction.
Right,
So
yep.
thanks, Abraham.
Indeed. Thank you. And in closing, I want to leave you with a question. Do you have 2 to 4 leaders in your company who, if they left, would cause a lasting impact on your business? If your answer is yes, then it's time to invest in them, not just professionally, but personally. Because here's the truth. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about showing up with empathy, clarity, and intention. So, I want you to know this. You are capable, you are resilient, and your presence as a leader matters. Thank you for joining me on Heliona Insight. Until next time, stay present, stay hopeful, and let's keep building workplaces where everyone feels valued and inspired to thrive.